Dear companions, it's time now to gather insights into the impact of learning, and that brings us to our next topic, the role of high impact learning in driving organizational performance and delivering business outcomes. Please welcome Mr. Keshav Murugesh, Group CEO, WNS Global Services, in conversation with Mr. Rajendra Pawar, Chairman and Co-founder, NIIT Limited. Over to you, gentlemen.
Hello all.
Welcome, Keshav.
Thank you, Raji.
Very, very hearty welcome. Always a pleasure to see your smiling face. Everybody should see his smiling face. It's a source of a lot of energy for me whenever I meet him. But anyway, very hearty welcome, Keshav. And again, to all of you who are investing your time with Confluence, I'm grateful and delighted to get you to join this session. So just a couple of words about Keshav. I can go on for the whole session, but I will keep it pointed. I see him as three things. I see him, first of all, as a great leader. ET calls him one of the most influential business leaders of Asia. They should have said the most business. A small correction they should have done. Second, he is called the turnaround Turk. I love that title. Turks are quite ferocious guys, as you know. And if you're doing a turnaround, then you know what you're in for. But he's been able to manage a lot of flailing business and turn them around in easy times and tough times with equal ease. Third is that he's been a very successful NASSCOM chairman. I would say one of the best we've had in broadening the impact. I mean, the impact of NASSCOM is known, but he broadened it across all sectors of society and built for us an exceptional working arrangement with the government of Maharashtra, which was good, but became exceptional. Then I think he also was responsible to re-architect and reposition what used to be the BPO business into business process management. And in one kind of jump, he went over the software engineering leg to say that, well, you know, even software engineering and systems have to be done to look at business processes. So that was a very, very bright and very well thought out repositioning exercise for the sector that he contributed to. And so he's a great leader first. Then I see him as a great thought leader. And there are two differences. I mean, people leader is more difficult, but thought leader is a different dimension. And I personally have had a very large number of experiences with him in NASSCOM, then working with NIIT. And I think his positivism is visible in his smile. I think that all of you can see. And his intellect is shining on his forehead. I remember once talking to Mr. Seshan in the good old days, the Chief Election Commissioner. And he once said, look, when I go and meet the political leaders, they say that, you know, Seshan's, look at Seshan, his head is always shining. So we can see that. And then, of course, unbelievable energy, which is people who are good people leaders have it, but many thought leaders I've seen are not as energetic in their 24-hour cycle. So unique thought leader. But the most important trait of him is that he's a very good man. He's a good man. And when you say a good man, and I have to give about 70% of the credit to his very charming wife, Shamini, who keeps him in within the right scaffolding to remain a very good man. And that's visible in the work that the two of them do in the WNS Cares Foundation for a long time, quietly, on looking at education for those who don't have access to it. So he's truly got a brain that's unique, but he's got a heart of gold. And personally, I give 51% of the marks for the heart of gold and 49% for his intellect. And it's a brilliant combination. So I was very keen to have him for this session because I think he connects the dots of all roles of leadership and management better than most people that I've seen. And here the dots we have to connect is that there's high impact learning, and there's organization development, and then there are outcomes. So these are not natural flows. We cannot assume that if we have very high impact training programs, that will make any difference to the organization. And some programs make a difference to the organization, but may not bring outcomes. So I think he also has this very, very clear and demonstrated capability to do the transitions of these thoughts and ideas and actions from one to the other. So what I'm going to do is, Keshav, this set of questions I have, short questions, and you can take your time. We have time till, I think, 1:15, if I'm not mistaken. So let me start with the first one. And the first one is that, too much has changed now. I think what COVID has done in 2 years, what changes we expect in 20, if not more. So how has talent management changed in this whole picture of work from home, work from anywhere, work culture, gig workers? In all of this, what has changed to talent management?
Thanks, Raji. First and foremost, for that very generous introduction. You essentially called me a bald, smiling man, and I accept it with a lot of grace. Any work that I have done pales in insignificance in front of the body of work that you have done and the great organization that you have built, NIIT has done. So I am really thrilled to be here in front of this audience and being spoken to, in this discussion. Look, we all realize that COVID-19 has now been a monumental reset for all organizations across the globe. And that's how we are seeing it. Prior to COVID, I think a lot of conversations had already started in terms of transforming into an agile, hybrid, and fluid kind of workforce. But all of that has now got accelerated thanks to COVID-19 into what I call an irreversible era of digital nomads and a highly personalized workforce. When we look back over the last 2 years and we look a little into the future, I actually see probably 3 amazing trends that have changed as far as talent management is concerned, and a lot of it driven by COVID. One is that digital and technology have actually enabled and deepened human connections. It's an amazing kind of insight that we have picked up at WNS, and I feel very excited about. But today we are now going well beyond just technology and technology-based solutions to run our business. We are actually running business, but building deep digital connections that I think are both human as well as humane. We are connecting with families, with friends, we're attending events, we're educating our children, in these models. And so therefore, technology has become such an integral and important part of our life. And, I must really mention that it is wonderful the way teams across the world have interacted and have actually got together around this big change. Even at WNS, as we run our business, we launched 2 very interesting HR related platforms during the COVID-19. One was something that we call Amelia, which is an AI powered HR chatbot that allows employees, to share awareness about COVID-19, and it also disseminates information, answers specific questions, and also gathers sentiment checks every now and then. So that is Amelia. We also introduced something called Glint during this crisis, which is nothing but a full stack AI-led digital learning module, as a result of which we are offering every one of our employees who are working from home a unique learning experience that goes beyond the areas that they are working on. So it's allowing them to work, to learn, and to earn, and to keep upgrading their skills. The second, I will say, has been where we find that critical talent can actually now be managed remotely. This is the second trend that we have discovered. What we are seeing now is micromanagement has completely disappeared. And I would say the politics of presenteeism, that is being present in a meeting and showing that you're in the meeting, has also dramatically changed, because people are able to see through some of this even in an interaction, online. Leaders and managers have now learned to be objective and much more data driven in managing team members' performance. And I think this has led to a great deal of trust, fairness, and I think to some extent people are doing this, better employee relations. And again, we've introduced a number of models at WNS for all of this, but one interesting model that we introduced was a platform called Talent Turf, where throughout the process, rather than waiting for a year-end kind of an appraisal, an employee could actually be interacting with the people that matter, in order to ensure that continuously there's an appraisal process that is taking place, so that by the end of the year, there is no doubt on what was the body of work that was done throughout the year. And I think it matters a lot that this has happened, because people are not actually meeting physically with each other. Those water cooler, talks are not available at this point in time anymore. And therefore, driving some of this leveraging technology is actually, engaging people more and allowing them to build a little more trust. The third trend I find very exciting, Raji, is that, national and international boundaries have completely disappeared. We are now able to unleash talent management across the world. And we are also able to take it to tier 2, tier 3 locations. I mean, just before we started this interaction, you told me about your, potential visit to the UK. I told you about how I spent 3 months in the UK. I will be back soon again. But companies are running, entire leadership teams are operating, performance is happening, and business is getting, done at a pace that has never been seen before, in a model that has never been seen before. So I think all of this is very interesting. And with this model, I think the other very interesting thing that is opening up, and I think potentially for India, is the fact that this model, leveraging technology, can now be taken to the hundreds of millions of women who now have a secondary education degree, but who are not part of any workforce because they want part-time roles or jobs. I think with technology, that is also possible. And with the government starting to change some of its policies, all of this is possible. So I will say now that work now follows talent, and talent has now been untethered from any particular location. In today's virtual world, talent now isn't restricted to any border. In fact, it's not restricted by any borders at this point in time. And this has led to a greater participation of skilled workers. And the demand for these people also has increased dramatically. And that is what is resulting in all this excitement about the great resignation and the fact that people who are now discovered, just like IPL players, are now in demand.
So now, anyway, I'll come back to this particular aspect because it's an interesting challenge. But staying with the mainstream, what should be the role, therefore, of the CEO, considering that I like your line about work follows talent, so you better keep the work within yourself, in your organization, not let it go somewhere else. But so therefore, what should be the role of the CEO to shape the talent strategy? To formulate and shape the talent strategy? What's the role of the CEO?
Excellent question, Raji. So, in this day and age and in this era where technology is driving everything, talent has to be nurtured extremely carefully, if you ask me. And therefore, I think that the role of the CEO must be the same in talent strategy as any sharp investor would play in a growing business. I think that's how one should be looking. A CEO should be looking at his or her role. And I think this means this person is now responsible to ensure that that to guide the teams, to ensure that there is clear architecting of differentiating capabilities and experiences, building domain and functional competencies. That's one. The second, I think, building a deep and versatile bench of high performing talent, both through an effective production line and also elevating performance throughout the time that they are at the company. And the third, I would say, is crafting a talent philosophy and a culture that will achieve it and will actually achieve not just this, but the business strategy and integrate this into every talent practice. So that, I think, is a crucial role that the CEO must now be playing. And let's just go back in time, Raji. You and I were very much involved in creating this. But if you look at what WNS did even a few years prior to this crisis also, was we created jointly a path-breaking WNS and NIIT University 2-year, fully work-integrated MBA program in business analytics. We created a curriculum that was actually created, that was proposed by industry experts, as well as people who understood business domains, extremely well. So professionals really from WNS's analytics program. And that actually created a huge buzz in the market and completely transformed the way analytics now is being deployed by universities and delivering high quality talent to the world at large. So I take great pride in the fact that WNS and NIIT actually created that originally. The second thing I would say is WNS also was one of the first organizations to actually collaborate with NASSCOM in this whole future skills program. Now, this is an industry ecosystem that is created in India in order to make sure that we are able to create large numbers of talent pool available for the market at large. But some of the critical curriculum and course content in certain areas was actually originally provided by WNS to this initiative. Third, I would talk about is, in between 22 and 24, what WNS is also creating is what we call the Board of Studies. And this is actually comprising members from different business units of WNS that now come together to help build a future-ready workforce. Now, this body essentially will assess and provide very valuable inputs on what are the skill gaps that are existing, what are the competencies which are relevant and which are needed, what is the change in the business landscape that needs to be navigated, sustainability. Remember, ESG is becoming such an important part of business and the investment thesis, and how to scale to enable our talent to be relevant in the longer term. In addition to this, I must also mention that what we have done, and again, the reason I'm saying all this is because these are all CEO-led programs inside WNS, right? We created something called Project Centurion, which is essentially a program to fast track 100 women into leadership positions at WNS, along with IIM Ahmedabad as well as Cornell University. So this is a 2.5-year program. We are now in the second batch of this program, and it is actually creating a lot of interesting outcomes for us in terms of positioning women to move into leadership positions. We've also continued to invest in a program called Wincubate, which is our CEO entrepreneurship challenge, where we actually encourage people and teams from within WNS to come up with ideas around technology and business, and the winning idea ultimately gets seeded with $250,000, and these teams can then take this idea to the market through WNS. I think the most interesting idea, Raji, there is that while each year one idea is the award winner and it is celebrated in great style inside WNS, we also managed to get 15 to 30 free ideas from other teams, many of which also get implemented. I think the most important thing is people are proud to do their work and to come up with new ideas, and they know that WNS has created this platform for them. So most of the new offerings that you see coming out from WNS over the past 2 years actually came out on the Wincubate program. And finally, I will say that we also have created something called Aspire, which is our flagship talent development program. And it just allows functional leaders to, to actually interact across the company and just ensure that a lot of these people are pushed towards becoming high potential talent. A lot of analytics is used behind this. A lot of meetings take place where leadership is involved in terms of spending the time to ensure that these programs are successful. And I think that is the hallmark of good talent management programs. I mean, you can announce all these programs, but if the CEO and his or her leadership team is not sending out a signal that talent is important, and therefore quite often we are locking ourselves in a room and actually looking at talent and coming up with these interesting programs and monitoring the success, then they won't work. I'm actually happy at the way WNS has actually managed this crisis from a talent management program. And I must say that I'm really delighted that my team has leveraged me to the hilt.
Great. So, so two questions, and you can club them together, because they're both, I think, interrelated. So you have talked of some elements of the components of the L&T strategy as a large term. And you've also talked about the fact that your people are leveraging you. So obviously your supervisors are already quite geared up. But what did you have to do to get the people, your leaders, what did you have to do to reorient them? And reorient them to what elements of the, if you were to call up the L&T strategy, and you have talked of elements of it, but is there a kind of a coherent structure that can help people to recognize what all is happening in that L&T strategy?
That's again a very relevant and great question, Raji. With COVID-19, the realization has been that I would say that there have been three radical changes in managers and supervisors' requirements. That's how I look at it. First is that in their relationships, these relationships have now shifted to remote nature, right? So I think this is the first realization for the leaders. Now, with declining visibility into the team members' day-to-day work, managers now have to focus much more on outcomes, metrics, and make the processes, I think, both agile as well as effective. So, what has changed is everything has become remote. So you have to manage by metrics and outcomes, and definitely not through politics. The second, I will say, is technology could now take over managers' tasks of scheduling or measuring productivity. Now, with this starting to happen, the manager's time can actually be much better spent in value-added aspects of talent management. That's how I see it. And the third is managers need to be a much more significant part of their team members' emotional well-being. Look, I think one of the big realizations in this crisis is you have to, not only help your team perform and do well, but you also have to help them improve their overall life experience. I think that has become a very critical aspect. Today, people, want to work for companies where they are cared for. Now, this word, I take care and cared for was much used even in the past, but today you can measure it. People actually look forward to interacting with leaders and team members who actually reach out to ask them something beyond the work. And particularly with the next generation of employee, we're seeing that's becoming far more relevant. So employee experience alone is not everything, but their life experience is now becoming everything. And at WNS, we have introduced the models to make sure that this is well featured, if you ask me. The other thing I will say that managers and supervisors need to be, I think, reoriented to meet all of these needs that I spoke about, and also to build empathetic relationships with their employees. Now, a Gartner study, Raji, says that only 47% of managers really are prepared for this future role. So there's a huge opportunity, and therefore there is a need for companies to actually understand this and put structured programs behind enabling this so that their managers can actually do some of this stuff. So from a WNS point of view, again, I'll say that we spent a lot of time planning for some of these things, making sure that connections were deeper, that people went beyond just interacting with employees only around the work, but also understood what was happening with their personal lives, their families, and just helping to build more the trust, confidence, care, and acceptance, I think, among the team. And I would say that these are the new ways of working, and we have created toolkits to explain these new ways of working to our employees. So I would, probably say that that is the core of, all of this. And along with this, I think the need to create digital models that enable all of this is something we have focused on, Raji.
So, since I see you as a very sensitive people manager, I am willing to accept that you're taking risks using technology to deal with feelings. It's complicated, right? Your own view when you look around, because, and I'll give my view, I don't find too many people leaders at the top. I was making the point in my talk to this community of learning and development people that in the beginning, the manufacturing guys became CEO. Then the marketing guys became CEO. Then the finance guys became CEOs. Then the technology guys became CEOs. Now is the time for the people, function leaders, to aspire to be CEOs, because this, as you rightly said, is becoming the core management asset, the things to be managed. So now in your case, I know from my interaction with you that you're a sensitive person, and therefore you will use technology for the things that build and live on sensitivity. But you also talked about metrics, and many others who are more system data driven may push technology at this time to measure how many minutes the guy worked actually, and was he actually working at home or not. So do you see a divergence therefore in how company cultures will move at this point? I mean, people sensitive leaders taking it one way, and efficiency oriented, hardcore number oriented leaders who've been successful as well, taking it in a way which is less sustainable?
Raji, again, great question. So first and foremost, I think anyone who has to be successful in the future world of business, at least the business that we are in, have to be very sensitive people managers first. Now, whether they're accountants or engineers or whatever else is secondary in my opinion. I think the most successful people in this business have traditionally been people who understand people well, but who also have a sharp business nose, right? I mean, end of the day, that is not going to go away. You can be an outstanding people manager and then run the company into the ground, right? Or you can say that this is what this company stands for. You communicate to everyone what the mission statement of the company is, what the values of the company are, and make sure that everyone understands that you never compromise on those values, and that integrity is a qualifier across the company. But at the same time, as a smart businessman, you will always communicate to all your employees that in a going concern concept, until and unless the company continues to progress, living its mission statement, breathing its values, creating the right reward and recognition programs, and celebrating its talent, and then delivering, industry-leading top line profitability, cash flows. If that doesn't happen, there is no point being just an outstanding leader. So I want to be upfront with you because, I have seen that quite often this discussion comes up whether one can be a one-dimensional kind of leader. You can't. You have to be a jack of all trades, and you have to be master of all, very frankly. And that need is not going to go away. In fact, it is going to become far more intense. All that we are discussing now is that in a situation where remote working is now here to stay, you have to leverage technology in order to ensure that your employees see the human aspect even more, right? And of course, you will manage metrics still, and you will still have to manage people in and out of the company. But I think what can be, how technology can actually be leveraged is in the sense of allowing people to understand that while they may not be at the workplace, while they may not actually be having these coffee discussions with each other, innovation is still being driven, that they are still getting, world-class roles, that they are still respected and regarded highly, that they and their families are very important, to the company, that their safety and health is critical, their learning needs are being met, and that constantly while they work at your brand, they are, elevating themselves into the next, job level. So yes, there will be a few companies who will say, let's leverage technology to, to go down the path of destroying shareholder value. I will actually say that, if you use technology just to monitor how many hours your employee spends at work and not actually the business outcomes, then that's a totally different culture. That culture will not be tolerated for very long. And let's also face it. I mean, you look at the trends for 2022. One of the big trends that we are seeing is that across the years, productivity actually has dropped, right? And during COVID, in a work from home kind of environment, while effort went up 18%, productivity actually reduced by 0.5%, Raji. I don't know how many people talk about this. Productivity actually reduced, right? And so therefore you had to put more people on certain jobs in order to make sure that you are still running, on the treadmill and delivering the kind of outcomes clients needed. But that's the reality of life, right? So you can tweak with productivity a little bit here and there, but that's the reality. If you're not in the office, you're working remotely, you can only work so many hours. A seat can only be leveraged so many times because you cannot have 3 people working from your seat now, which you did in the past. And then with cybersecurity risks and other risks, there's only that much you can do. So I will say that my advice to any good leader is focus on what needs to be delivered to shareholders, but be a sensitive, people person, because that is what is going to ensure that your talent stays with you. Remember that, the birth rates across the globe are dropping. In fact, during COVID, the birth rate of India actually went below the rest of the world. And if we are saying that India is going to deliver people for the rest of the world, remember the birth rate already went below the rest of the world. So there is going to be a scramble for talent, and talent will only stay with companies that respect them, look after them, and are constantly allowing them to learn.
One big concern being raised in some quarters, I think, is about attrition and about compensation increase, because now that people are and companies are becoming proficient to get work done anywhere or from anywhere, what stops a young entrepreneur in New York City from hiring away people that we have put together in our companies here at double the cost, because it still is 1/4 his cost? So then we have a question of saying, what will hold people if not salary? And if it's only salary, then to what extent can business, the one important aspect of business outcome is profitability or margins or attractiveness of the business. So how is this, what will be the interplay of factors to make sure that the competitive, one dimension of competitive advantage, even today, it was the only one earlier, is the cost structure. So now if a guy is sitting in New York and pay 4 times the salary or 2 times and still be very profitable compared to his peers in that market, what will it take to make sure that that doesn't become a distractor or a destroyer of margins?
So Raji, this is probably the high quality question that every CEO in our business, and in fact, I would say that all services business is now, trying to answer along with their boards. And actually this actually puts front and central the fact that no more can old models sustain in a new era, right? So if anyone is looking at running a business based on wage arbitrage alone, that train left the station long ago. Today, it is all about making sure that you have the right people, the right qualifications. More importantly, you also have the right offering programs out in the market, which are not based on wage arbitrage. Because if that is the case, you will be toast in no time, right? And that's the reason, if you look at the IT world of India, or you look at the business process management world of India, we have now seen 3 model changes. The first model that many of us were used to 25 years ago was this whole wage arbitrage model, which I like to call as your mess for less, right? Because that's how clients understood it at that point in time. And from there, we went to a model of value beyond cost, where we brought in smart people, we introduced domains, but we also introduced a little bit of technology and analytics. And today, over the past 3 or 4 years, and now accelerated by COVID, is actually this whole message of digital transformation, where the kind of talent that we have all brought into our companies is very different to what we may have had 20, 25 years ago. For example, at WNS, Raji, we have close to 8,000 or 9,000 accountants, doing work for clients across the globe. We have large numbers of pharmacists and doctors doing work for clients across the world. We have PhDs, doing, analytics. We have actuarial talent doing work for people across the world. And this is not the kind of talent you would traditionally equate with a traditional business process management company, right? And the reason for this is because we saw the writing on the wall a few years ago, and we said, look, we have to actually be at the front end of our clients' business problems, and we actually have to be a partner to them in their sales processes and not necessarily only their back office processes. And that's the reason why talent has changed. And therefore, I will say the only advice I will give to people running business is, first and foremost, your offerings in the marketplace have to be completely new age, digital focused, transformational oriented, outcome based, and not input based. That's the first. The second is your talent must be not hired essentially because they are low cost, but essentially because they are high impact. You have to build those relationships. You have to constantly keep training them, educating them, and making sure that beyond that they are learning inside your company, as a result of which, even if they are getting these crazy offers from other companies, they want to be with you. And you're always going to lose talent, and your model has to provide for it. You have to provide for a model where you're having attrition and you're constantly replacing people with other smart people who also want to come from somewhere else into your ecosystem, right? So that's the second thing. And the third thing is, the market does not forgive CEOs and leaders who can't actually navigate a business problem of this nature and still deliver industry-leading top-line profitability as well as cash flow. Because if you can't do it, you will be toast, your company will be in trouble, your stock price will see it. So all of this we are seeing for the past 2 or 3 years, Raji, and I can say that the smarter companies have figured it out and have constantly pushed the envelope the other way and made sure that they're seen as the best place to work in. They're seen as talent magnets, and all of it comes from some of the things we discussed during this discussion, which is putting employee first and everything else around it.
So finally, the last question, and that actually also got triggered yesterday by one of the panelists in my mind. And she said, she's a CEO of one of our good mid-sized software companies. She said, our anchor who was questioning her, what's the one thing you want to see which is different? She says that as a talent manager, if this work from anywhere, and we had talked of the disruption in the day's schedule, if you're at home and wherever, if all my people in the company do a 30-minute learning session like you do a yoga or something every day. It's part of their day and they're learning every day. Then I know, A, they will stick with me because they're growing every day. And second is there's a readiness in place. Now, when we used to talk of lifelong learning earlier, we kept saying, okay, every 2 years we'll change things and so on, but everything is shrunk. So how do you see this view of lifelong learning and also as a stickiness factor? Because money is not everything. I think I heard Rishad say yesterday, engagement, he used an open word. But from a learning point of view, what is the stickiness that all our learning leaders who I see as future CEOs, how should they see this whole lifelong learning in the hybrid world? How should they see this opportunity?
So Raji, actually you raise a very important point, because the reality is one has to have commitment to lifelong learning, and companies that have that commitment actually define their culture. It defines their culture really. And it is not just, in my view, a responsibility. So we all know this is not a one-time event, and neither are people's career aspirations one-time events. They want to constantly grow. They want to constantly evolve. They want to constantly keep learning. So I personally think that some of the things that organizations should probably look at doing is to make continuous learning and self-improvement part of their DNA, and core values, and maybe create an easily accessible platform of comprehensive, learning assets. Because see, a lot of this we talk about, ultimately, if they are not executed, it's no use. It must be easy for the employee to go in there and learn. It's no point just you and me talking about it and then leaving it there. So first and foremost, it should be easy. Create a platform which is easily accessible, where people can go and log in, learn for that day, whatever they want to do. Provide, regular internal learning, opportunities. We do a lot of roundtable discussions at the company on varied topics, and today, I mean, what you are doing today also, and in fact, over the past 2 days, is essentially this. Many people who are here are probably learning new things. Many of these may be old things to them, but they must be also learning new things. And when you hear this coming from other people, sometimes you tend to take it far more seriously. The third thing I would say is, we should all look to enabling our people's external training, programs. So create those forums so they can participate, externally as well. Conferences, certification courses, things like that. Then give the employees the opportunities to, I think, stretch themselves, learn and expand their possibilities in whatever way they want to do it. So here we have a very interesting model where Swami, my HR head, encourages people to come back to him and his entire L&D team in terms of new age models that they have heard somewhere else that they think could work for us. So we have to be very open about some of these things. And finally, I think activating, peer learning and, mentorship programs. I think these are all some of the things that structurally we can do. And for us, what we did, Raji, was, I mentioned Glint earlier. This was actually launched during this pandemic with all of these objectives in mind, really. So it's a, learning management platform, which is AI, powered, which allows all of this, for employees, so they can actually choose and mix and match and decide which areas they want to make progress on. And from a corporate point of view, also, there are certain inputs given saying, for specific individuals saying, in these areas, we would recommend that you, do some of this as well. So this actually, and I would say, encourages and always on kind of an environment and a knowledge, a management sharing kind of a program, which is peer-to-peer. And I think these are the kind of models I would say that, people look forward to participating in.
So this has been wonderful. We are on time, and I think lots of thoughts, lots of food for thought for everybody, for me. So thanks so much. I think as always, I take away a lot of new thoughts after meeting you, and I'm sure all our participants have found this session very, very rich with thoughts, ideas, and with emotions. I think it's an important thing for us is emotions. So, Keshav, thank you so much for finding the time and for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Raji, and I wish the conference every success. Thank you so much.